All right. And yeah, thank you again, Alisa, for joining us today. Looking forward to hearing more about electrification from Pacific Corp. So if you can take it away.
Sure. I guess I'll do a quick little introduction. I'm Pacific Power's regional business manager. I'm based here in Bend. I cover Crook County, Jefferson County, and Deschutes County. I've been at the company for about 15 years. I started in our legislative policy department and did state legislative affairs for about 5 years in all three of our western states. So we have territory in Oregon, Washington, and California. And then I moved into this same job for three different counties in 2015, doing Multnomah County, Clatsop County, and Lincoln County. And then took over this role in December of 2024. So not quite a year. And I'm sort of getting up to speed. Certainly, different issues facing the region, different policy purviews of the different municipalities that we work in. But just to kind of orient you, so Pacific Power in Oregon serves about 800,000 customers. We have about 100,000 of those residing in Central Oregon. So this is our fastest growing region. And I feel like when I first, got introduced here, it was a lot of, oh, this project's new or this project's new and this development is happening. And there's a lot of construction. I myself moved into new construction and where the Pacific Power offices are in Juniper Ridge is also under construction. So it just seems like there's construction happening everywhere, which is great, right, for the region. So there's a lot of new businesses moving in, expansions happening. And then sort of, I guess, what you all really care about is residential housing. So I certainly have been engaged with most of the larger builders in the community and have understood kind of the longer term vision. I also sit on the Invest Bend committee, which is kind of talking through economic strategy for the city over the next 10 to 15 years. And so as a newbie, I get to ask a lot of questions because I don't know the history. I don't know kind of what the vision has historically been. So I get to ask those questions, which is great. I am currently, have been on the circuit of talking to all the council members in Bend, just to do mostly introductions. And every single one of them has brought up affordable housing and electrification, along with a whole host of other topics. But those have certainly been very prominent topics in those discussions. And I think from my understanding of where council is at right now is they have directed staff to put together what does new residential electrification look like. And I think that sort of policy discussion is still ongoing at the staff level, but I've been asked to weigh in on just electrification, generally speaking, and grid support and capacity. So I guess that's where I'm going to start this discussion. And I did have some slides to show kind of growth rate of Bend, which is very high. So the region has seen about a 40% growth in electrification since 2021. And the key drivers there are AC adoption. Every new house, it seems like, has AC. Every new building does. And there's been a lot of retrofitting from what I've understood. So that's one driver. Population growth, obviously, there was a huge boom during COVID and it's continued. So population growth just generally has driven that. Technology adoption, so electric vehicles. And then interestingly enough, when I talk to our engineers, they say in the higher end housing market, heated driveways, which, I mean, I guess I have not been through a winter here yet, but it does not seem like it snows enough for that. But anyway, that is a driver in at least the residential sector for higher energy usage at a individual's home. And then policy change has driven electrification as well. So we have some kind of key drivers And then now kind of down to where the city discussion is, most of the council members have basically said, listen, our goal, we have kind of almost competing goals, right? They want to continue to build affordable infrastructure to support the population that is here. And also, they would like to do what's good in their view for climate change and the environment. And where I come in is I've been asked to provide some data on what does that mean from a capacity perspective. So Pacific Power has some capacity constraints in the region. That 40% growth was certainly not in our plans. And so we've had to fast track a lot of our energy infrastructure um, projects. And several of those are at the substation level. We do have a few at the transmission level. If you're not familiar with how energy works, you basically have a generation facility. So you have a wind, a solar, a gas plant, some coal, hydro, all of those are generation sources. Then you put it on the transmission system, then it goes to a substation, and it steps down from there into what is the voltages that serve your house. So all of that infrastructure, PacifiCorp owns generation on down to distribution. We're vertically integrated utility. So we've had to fast track some of our distribution and transmission projects to serve the growth of the region. And where I have committed to council, and I'm sort of crunching the numbers, so you're going to hear some numbers, but they're heavily caveated at this point. But the council has said, what would happen if we did electrification for all new housing units going forward, starting basically next year? And for me, it's like, well, how many housing units are we talking? What is the percentage of large versus small? So I've had to do a lot of like assumptions and talking to council about what exactly it is that they're asking me to do. But from a capacity perspective, if they were to try to go all electric 100% next year with all the new housing units, Pacific Power would have a challenge serving that load. If they were to phase it, and they've kind of asked me what's 100%, what's 75%, 50, and 25%. And from an energy capacity perspective, it is much easier to have a gradual approach. So I've kind of tried to say, hey, I'm not here to tell you what's good and what's good policy or bad policy. I'm here to just provide you some data. So that data is coming. I think the sort of joint committee is going to happen in sometime in late fall. So I'm hoping to have, better numbers by late fall. But essentially, Pacific Power is looking to what is the city looking to do in this sector, and how can we support it from an infrastructure perspective, but also what does that mean? I've talked to like the Builders Association, like what does that actually mean? Because from my personal perspective, if I were to look at it holistically, Pacific Power is still in the middle of the energy transition. We're not 100% emissions free. We're still 60% fossil fuel based. That is changing by 2040 based on Oregon law, HB 2021. We're in compliance with that law, but we're on a pathway to get there. But right now, you move to 100% electrification, and you didn't necessarily achieve the goal that you were trying to achieve. And also, all of those builders that are in this region also serve other communities. And so my question back to them is, what do those builders then do with their inventory? Well, they're going to go put it in Crook County, or they're going to put it in Colorado or somewhere else. And does that really get you the goal that you're trying to achieve too? So I've been trying to ask questions back to council of like what exactly their goals are, and then to try to provide them as much data as I can. But electrification is coming. I mean, I think that is the way things are trending. And as an infrastructure provider, we are trying to keep up with that trend and also balance what does that look like from a rate perspective as we are building infrastructure. How do we do that in an affordable way for our customers? How do we, beef up programs to support lower and moderate income folks so that they can also continue to live the lifestyle that they have and grow into new opportunities, and again balance all of this infrastructure build out with policies that come at us. So I guess I'll pause there. When Jenny asked me to speak here, I wasn't exactly sure kind of what people were looking for, but know that at least from my perspective, I think that council members have all asked some really good questions. And I think they're really trying to engage in a dialogue, at least from what I have observed in my short time here, of trying to find a policy that moves in a direction that they feel is good for the community as a whole. And they are, at least, from my perspective, what I've heard is trying not to leave anybody behind. So I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take questions on kind of any topic. I mean, I've been at the company for a while, so I know a little bit about a lot of things.
Hi, I've got a question. First of all, thank you so much for speaking here. That was very insightful. My question is, when you say that Pacific Power doesn't have or would struggle to meet the demand if we were to mandate 100% electrification, is that because there's difficulty generating that much electricity, or is it like getting that electricity to the homes? Like, I'm just wondering where the bottleneck is.
Yeah, great question. No, we're not generation short. It really is the infrastructure, the poles and wires that serve the community. We would need more of it. We would need more circuits out of our substations to accommodate additional growth.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. So is it the materials, or is it just like the ability to lay it down?
Good question. I mean, it would require building new infrastructure, so that would be materials. But also, the certain substations would need to be upgraded. So there might be generation resource where we have the generation, but we don't have the substation that's big enough to handle said generation additions, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you'd probably need new substations, right? Like, would new substations need to be built all together?
Correct. Yeah. So as I was looking, so currently right now with the growth rate that Bend has, we have plans for 6 new distribution transformers at existing substations. Within the city limits of Bend, we have procured 2 parcels of land for future substations. Those are going to be in the 2030s sometime, not really yet determined. We've got a project right now in Redmond building a new substation that should be online by 2028. And then we have our big transmission project, which is called Project Blueprint. That is one of the very large 500 kilovolt lines coming to Central Oregon, and that's slated for the early 2030s.
I have another question, if nobody's got anything. My question is, when that new infrastructure comes in, or generally when a municipality starts mandating more, buildings to be electric, how does that affect the cost of electricity? If there's more infrastructure for it, does that bring the cost down? Or if more people are demanding it, my thought is that the cost would go up, but I actually don't really know what forces cause electric prices to go up or down.
Yeah, rate making is very complicated. I've been here for 15 years and it's still like very difficult to understand. But as we build new infrastructure, that is, if it is a infrastructure that's built to support customers that or a region that's growing, those costs are what we consider network increases in network benefit. So that benefits the entire network. So that would go to the Public Utility Commission, which is our regulator. That's a state level regulation. And we would basically say, hey, we needed to build this many substations over the last few years, this many line miles, this transmission, whatever it is, goes into what's called a rate case. And we have to prove that that was a prudent cost decision for customers. And then our regulators allow us to recover those costs in rates. What is interesting about a municipal decision, which is different than, say, the state legislature, is we've never had a municipality contemplate a policy that would require a significant amount of infrastructure to be built within one municipality. And I don't know how that would be treated at the state level. So when it's a state policy, the state legislature works with the Oregon Public Utility Commission, and they figure out, what is a cost-effective way to implement this new legislation that was passed. If a municipality, much like, say, if Portland tried to do this, I don't think Bend would want to pay for Portland's decisions, and neither would Medford want to pay for Bend's, and neither Coos Bay is not going to want to pay for Astoria. So we've never really had a municipality policy contemplated that would require a significant amount of infrastructure. And I've tried to be open and transparent with the council about that and just say, listen, if you're on a glide path with this policy and you're looking to do this over a certain number of years, we have plans to support infrastructure already. Like I told you, there's substation parcels already procured. We're already building new distribution. We're already working on transmission. If this policy is contemplated in a way that's progressive and sort of on a glide path, on a ramping schedule, we can meet that without having to build additional infrastructure. If it's more of a, we want this tomorrow, that is going to be it's going to be a really interesting discussion, because I have never seen a municipal policy that would require infrastructure to be built to serve customers that otherwise the path would be different.
Thank you for the thorough answer.
Alisa, thanks so much for taking time this afternoon. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about potential interruptions in service, either due to wildfire risk or high ice and wind storms in the winter, and how Pacific Power mitigates for that, and if those mitigation plans are anticipated to change as more electrification is projected to occur in the Bend area.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, let's talk about wildfire season since we're in summer. So we have kind of 3 different operational practices that can that make the system a bit more sensitive, all under wildfire prevention and public safety. So the first one is called Enhanced Safety Settings, or ESS. That is the one that's probably gotten the most public airtime and some media attention. It essentially, our system is built that if a disturbance, a tree limb, a leaf, an animal hits the line will try to trip itself back on. So it'll try to remove the disturbance by basically doing an open and close. It's literally like opening and closing a circuit. So you might see as a customer like a flicker, or maybe even just like a blinking of your lights. And that's how the system is designed in wildfire season. And it's designed to do that 3 times before it says, hey, this is a disturbance that isn't going away. Now you have an outage. During wildfire season, we no longer have that 3 touch point. It's a one shot. So if there's a disturbance on the line, it's basically going to trip and open, and now you have an outage. And during wildfire season, we will send a physical body to go patrol that circuit. Some circuits are super dense and They are close together, and that patrol might take an hour. Some are very rural and take a long time to access, and those can be hours. And this is a practice that we basically put in during wildfire season. And at the end of wildfire season, and the system will go back to its normal configuration of that three attempts and then an outage. So enhanced safety settings, or ESS, is probably the one that's the most painful for customers, especially if customers are like, it's a really nice day, it's not hot, we're not in red flag, like it's not windy, what happened? And those circuits, once they're placed in that ESS wildfire setting, it remains until the end of wildfire season. And the region here went into that settings in early June. So it's been in place for a while. So that's operational practice number one. The second is called a public safety power shutoff, or a PSPS. That is a proactive decision to terminate power based on weather conditions. That comes with a whole host of regulatory requirements on how we communicate to customers, starting about a week ahead of time. And then about 5 days ahead of time, then 3 days, then 2 days, then the day of, there's multiple communications. There's only ever been one in the state of Oregon, and that was in 2022. And it did not impact anywhere in Central Oregon. There were a few other counties, but and nowhere in Central Oregon did we do a PSPS. And then the third practice is called emergency de-energization, or encroachment. This is when there's an active wildfire that is close proximity to any of our lines, whether it's transmission or distribution. We may proactively de-energize that line based on that wildfire behavior coming toward our infrastructure. We have what's called a fire emergency response manager, one based here in Bend. He is a retired fire chief out of Northern California, and he will go once there's, most of you probably have watch duty. If there's something like a watch duty alert or a NIFC alert, we will go send, his name is Todd. We'll go send Todd to go take a look at it. And based on his experience, based on how he can communicate with the fire response or the BLM or the department of forestry, whoever is sort of incident command, we will make that determination. We have had one of those in Central Oregon, and that was up near Redmond in June, I believe. So those are kind of the three operational practices that we have during wildfire season. Your second point is your second question was about electrification policy and whether that will hurt or harm reliability. Neither. As more circuits are built, I think we are hardening our system to mostly mitigate against wildfire, but that certainly helps in ice and windstorms. The same type of insulated wire or Hendrix cable that have these little clamp things on them that keep the phases from slapping together are designed for wildfire season, but they are great for windstorms, and they are great for reliability in winter conditions. Hopefully that answered your question. Don, you're so quiet. You got nothing?
Not on top of Alisa. She's got it wired.
Yeah, any other questions or thoughts?
Can't wait to see the numbers.
You and me both. I was actually just talking to Jonathan at the city, making sure that I had the right number of housing units based on the housing needs assessment so that I can make sure I'm kind of calculating the facts and figures appropriately, especially based on the city has published percentages on housing unit type based on mostly square footage, how small or how large of homes. So I'm doing my best to use their assumptions when I'm trying to, calculate what does this mean from an energy perspective.
What was the city's reaction when you educated them about the municipal impact or non-tested municipal impact on a rate case?
Most of the council members kind of said, well, I don't think we're going to be contemplating any policy that's going to require you to build at that speed and scale that you wouldn't already be building. So I took that to mean as they're looking at a ramped and phased approach that will fit in with our assumptions about Bend's growth rate. There were only, a couple of sort of probing questions around, well, what would that mean? Like, how much does a substation cost is essentially what they said. And I said, well, that all depends on how much land costs. And you can imagine how much land costs in the city of Bend. So they did ask me that question. So I did go to our asset group who kind of work on budgeting for substations and said, hey, can you give me an average of what a substation costs? And their first response to me was, well, where am I building it? And I said, in Bend. And they're like, oh, okay, well, we can get you something. So I will have that number. That is going to be part of the presentation of just like, here's what infrastructure costs, and here's what it costs to build like a line mile underground, because pretty much we put everything new underground. So I'm hopeful to have some of that data so that they can be better informed. It's helping me too. I had no idea.
Will there be a big presentation to City Council that'll be part of one of the public meetings? Like, is there a date set for that, or that'll be on an agenda sometime this fall?
Yes, I believe it will be to City Council, and yes, it will be on an agenda. They have not given me a date. I've just been told late fall. I don't know what that means.
At last night's City Council work session, you probably go online and you can see the presentation by Cassie for the policies. And I think October 20th is when that's slotted for the next presentation. And that presentation would be this is a model with rates and dollars and revenue and so on. It would be sort of down the road a fair amount, at which time after that, the three committees, the AHAC, BDAB, and the ECC would then get together and talk about it.
And from what Cassie has mentioned to me is that is the group that I would be presenting to first, is that tri-committee group, as just like here's some data, and then it would go to City Council from there. So if Dawn's saying that Cassie's presentation goes to council in late October, I'm guessing November, but I don't know.
Yep.
I'm hoping to have all of my stuff done by the end of September. So
yeah. Well, great. Oh, we're at 4:31. So thank you all so much. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to Alisa, or at least I can share your contact information with folks if that's okay with you.
Sure. Yep. Happy to.
Okay.
Thank you, Lisa. Your leadership is awesome. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much. You guys have a good afternoon.
Bye.